Hello friends, welcome to a new topic today. In this chapter, we are going to learn about the introduction and history of orthopedics. Okay, so first, what is the term orthopedics? The term orthopedics is given by a scientist called as Nicolas Andre. Nicolas Andre is the has given the term orthopedics. What does this term orthopedics mean? Ortho means straight, pedics is child. So he has given the name orthopedics meaning straight child. Okay, so Nicolas Andres is the scientist who had written the first book for orthopedics, and he had also given the emblem for orthopedics. So what is the emblem for orthopedics? This picture is the emblem for orthopedics, where you have a tree which is put by a wooden rod and tied. Okay, who is that? Is Nicolas Andre. Then who is the father of orthopedics? The father of orthopedics is given by Nicolas Andre. Okay, then who is the father of British orthopedics? Father of British orthopedics is H.O. Thomas. Then who is the father of modern orthopedics? Father of modern orthopedics is Robert Jones. Robert Jones is the father of modern orthopedics. Then if you see, father of orthoscopy is Watanabe. So these are the four names which you should remember. Father of orthopedics is Nicolas Andre. Father of British orthopedics is H.O. Thomas. Father of modern orthopedics is Robert Jones. Father of orthoscopy is Watanabe. Then who has given emblem for orthopedics? This is the emblem for orthopedics that is given by Nicolas Andre. Then who is the father of orthoplasty? Father of orthoplasty, if you see, father of orthoplasty is given by Charnley. Charnley is the scientist who has given father of orthoplasty, who is called father of orthoplasty. So we know H.O. Thomas, right? There are some discoveries which are present around H.O. Thomas. What are they? H.O. Thomas has discovered a collar for cervical spinal injuries. Okay, he has discovered a wrench for correction of deformities. He has discovered a collar for cervical spine injuries, a wrench for correction of deformities. He has given the hip flexion deformity test for hip flexion deformity, called by the name Thomas test. Then he has splint for lower limb, especially for TB of knee. He has given a splint. Then he has given called the shoes. He has also given shoes for CTEV. So these are the things which were given by Thomas, H.O. Thomas. Okay. Then on X-ray, what are you going to see on X-ray? The facts, if you see, what are the facts? There are some facts that you should remember. On X-ray, cortex, in the cortex, if there is a fracture, okay, you see microscopic or macroscopic break in the continuity of cortex is called as fracture. What is fracture? Fracture is microscopic or macroscopic break in the continuity of cortex is called as fracture. In the marrow consists of many diseases, and it also can give rise to intraosseous tumors. Okay, now let us learn about the radiological features. Okay, what do you see the radiological features? So if you see, the first thing in osteomyelitis, if you were asked what is the earliest X-ray finding in osteomyelitis, earliest X-ray finding in osteomyelitis is loss of soft tissue plane after 24 hours is the earliest X-ray finding, followed by periosteal reaction which is seen at 7 to 10 days. First there will be loss of soft tissue plane which is seen after 24 hours, and then there will be periosteal reaction which is seen after 7 to 10 days. Then if you see in the TB, what is seen earliest in the TB? In the TB earliest you see loss of curvature of spine, which is followed by decreased disc space. First you see loss of curvature of spine, which is followed by decreased disc space. And if there is any glass injury, what is the first investigation that is done if there is any glass injury? The first investigation done in case of glass injury is X-rays. Okay, so these are the important points that should be remembered. Next we will see the some important points about the joints also. Okay, so first we will see about the shoulder joint. In the shoulder joint, the important point is what is the ratio of head glenoid, head of humerus to glenoid is equal to 4:1 in shoulder joints. In shoulder joints, the ratio of head of humerus to glenoid is given is equal to 4:1. Okay, then if you see in the humerus, in the shoulder joint, clavicle is the highest bone mark which you see on the anteroposterior view of X-ray of shoulder. This is one liner which is asked. Then if you see in infraclavicular fossa, a question is asked in the previously, in the infraclavicular fossa, which of the bony landmark is palpable. Then the bony landmark that is palpable in the infraclavicular fossa is coracoid process is the bony landmark which is palpable. Okay, then we will see some important points about elbow joint. Okay, this table is very important for the elbow joint especially. Okay, so this is the ossification according to chronological order. What is the first bone to get ossified? The first bone to get ossified is capitulum, which is ossified at 2 years of age, followed by radial head, which is ossified at 4 years of age, which is followed by internal or medial epicondyle, which is ossified at 6 years of age, which is followed by trochlea, which is ossified at 8 years of age, followed by olecranon, ossified at 10 years of age, followed by external or lateral epicondyle, ossified at 12 years of age. Okay, so this ossification is very important, which can be remembered by the mnemonic CRETOI, which is capitulum, radial head, internal or medial epicondyle, trochlea, olecranon and external or lateral epicondyle, all starting from 2 to 12 in the multiples of 2. Okay, that is about shoulder joint. That is about elbow joint, which is very important. Next, about the wrist joint. Okay, if you see in the wrist joint, the largest bone in the wrist joint is capitate, and this is the first bone to get ossified also. The largest bone is capitate, and it is also the first bone to undergo ossification is also capitate. Okay, now in the lower end of radius, then if you see in the lower end of radius, we have some important things which should be remembered in the lower end of radius. Okay, we have two lines which are very important in the lower end of radius. Okay, these three actually, but these two are more important. One which is called as palmar tilt or volar tilt. Second, there is something called as radial height or ulnar negative. Third, we call it as radial inclination. Okay, so here we have three different angles and or some measurements which are pertaining to the lower end of radius. So what are they? So what does these mean? So if you see this palmar tilt or volar tilt, it is seen at 11 to 12 degrees on the anteroposterior view. What is this actually? This is the volar tilt. See, this is the line which is connecting the distal and points of volar and dorsal lips. See, this is the this is the dorsal lip, this is the volar lip. Okay, this is the radius. Okay, this is the radius bone, and then you will draw a line which is connecting the volar and dorsal points. That is, instead of saying the front point, I mean the upper point and lower point, or volar and dorsal points, and this line makes an angle with the horizontal line. That angle which it makes with the horizontal line is called as volar tilt, and this volar tilt is found to be 11 to 12 degrees Celsius on AP view. It connects distal points of volar and dorsal lips of radius. Then we have something called as radial height or ulnar negative. What do you see in this radial height or ulnar negative? This is the radius, amount of radius, or the are the height of the radius which is distal to ulna. If you see, radius and ulna, both these do not end at the same point. Ulna ends earlier in the distal point than the radius. At the wrist joint, ulna ends earlier than radius. Radius ends a little later than ulna. So this distal radius, distal part of the radius which is present distal to ulna is called as radial height. Okay, how much is it seen? This radial height is 21 millimeters. Okay, it is 21 millimeters. So what is it? It is the radius distal to ulna is radial height. Then we have something called as radial inclination also. What is this radial inclination? This is also related to radius. Okay, actually this radial inclination is 22 to 22.5 degrees Celsius. 23 plus or minus 2.5 degrees Celsius is radial inclination. But actually what is it? See, you will draw a line which is joining the tip of the radial styloid to the medial surface of articular surface of radius and ulna. See, this is the point. See, you will draw a line which is joining from the tip of the styloid process. So this is styloid process. From the tip of the styloid process to the midpoint of articular surface of radius and ulna, and then you will draw a straight line connecting to these both. Okay, and then this line with the perpendicular line that is representing the long axis of the radius, you will draw this line. Okay, this is perpendicular, this is the line, this is the long axis of radius. To this long axis of radius you will draw a perpendicular line. Okay, the angle between the first line, which is the line joining the radial styloid to the midpoint of radius and ulna, and this perpendicular line drawn to the long axis of radius is called as radial inclination. Okay, so these are some important measurements which are given. Then here let us now learn about the parts of the bone. Okay, in the parts of the bone, in this is the bone. Okay, here this bone has the following parts. One, they have the upper end of the bone is called as epiphysis. Okay, upper end of the bone is called as epiphysis. This is, see, the bone is mainly divided into three parts. Okay, one which is the upper end of the bone. Second, we have the middle end of the bone. Third, which is the lower end of the bone. This is the lower end of the bone. Okay, now the upper end of the bone, it has three parts. This middle end of the bone is only one part, that is, it is diaphysis. Middle end of the bone has only one part, which is diaphysis, but upper end of the bone is divided into three parts. One is epiphysis, second metaphysis, second physis, third metaphysis. Okay, you can see three parts, 1, 2, and in between this third line. Okay, so you have epiphysis, physis and metaphysis. These are the three parts of upper end of the bone. Okay, now you will have to see each of them in detail. So if you see this physis has a radiolucent area. This physis is seen as radiolucent area, especially in X-ray. Why is this seen as radiolucent area? Because this physis is actually made up of cartilage. Because this physis is made up of cartilage, this physis is seen as radiolucent area in the X-ray. That is important thing about physis. Then if you see, the next part of the bone is metaphysis. This metaphysis is actually the most vascular area of the bone, and because it is the most vascular area of the bone, it is the most common location of infection and tumors of the bone. Okay, this metaphysis is the most vascular region of the bone, and because it is the most vascular region of the bone, it is most common location of infection and tumors of the bone. Then if you see in diaphysis, diaphysis is most commonly associated with the tumor which is Ewing's sarcoma. Okay, in the lower end of the bone, we have the articular cartilage seen in the lower end of the bone. Okay, so this is the different parts of the bone, right? Then Then this articular cartilage we will see here. So in the articular cartilage you will have to see what are the different zones present in the articular cartilage. We have zones in the articular cartilage. What are the different zones of articular cartilage? The different zones of articular cartilage are divided into 4 zones mainly. One, we have the superficial zone. What are they? We have the superficial zone, then transitional zone, then we have the radial zone, then we have the final zone which is calcified cartilage. Then we will see each of them in detail, 1 or 2 points for each of them. Okay. So first we will see superficial zone. So what is seen in the superficial zone? So if you see this superficial zone, it is the present in the topmost layer. It is here. This is the superficial zone. This superficial zone, number 1, it has highest content of water. So that is one important thing. It has highest content of water is present in the superficial zone, and it has the progenitor cells for the articular cartilage is seen in the superficial zone. In superficial zone it has highest content of water, and it has progenitor cells for cartilage. It also has, because it has progenitor cells for cartilage, it has many chondrocytes. Okay, these progenitor cells will differentiate and form chondrocytes. That is superficial zone. Then after superficial zone, the next zone which is seen here is the transitional zone. The second zone is transitional zone. So what do you see in this transitional zone? So this is the transitional zone. Okay, what are you going to see in this transitional zone? This is the thickest zone of all these zones. I know I didn't draw it up properly, but still this transitional zone is the thickest zone, and it contains the chondrocytes of lowest density. Okay, it contains chondrocytes, but those chondrocytes are low density. Okay, they are very less, the chondrocytes, when compared to others. Okay, so transitional zone, it is thickest zone and it has low density chondrocytes. Then the next zone is radial zone. So what do you see in radial zone? In radial zone you see many chondrocytes. See, all these are chondrocytes. So this radial zone is the zone with most active chondrocytes are present in radial zone. And this zone, because of the most active chondrocytes, it has maximum density. Okay, it also has maximum proteoglycan content, and it also has low density. Because it has maximum proteoglycan content, it has more chondrocytes, so obviously the water content is very less because it has more other cells present. So it has low density of water. That is radial zone. Okay, the final zone which you see here is the calcified zone. The last and final zone is calcified cartilage or calcified zone. So this calcified zone is closest part to the bone. This is the closest zone to the bone. So these are the zones of articular cartilage which are seen. So what are they? We have superficial zone, then transitional zone, then we have radial zone, then finally we have calcified zone. Next we will learn a few points about the growth plates also. In the growth plate or physis, if you see, this is the histological feature of growth plate or physis. Even it has some zones. So this growth plate or physis has 4 zones again. It has the resting zone, followed by a proliferation zone where you see many cells which are proliferating, and these proliferated cells have to differentiate and they should mature. So we have maturation zone. This maturation zone, after that these cells should undergo calcification, right, for formation of bone. So that is provisional calcification zone which is present at the end. So if you see, we will see, so we will have to see the disorders associated with it, with this here. So in the resting or zone, it is also called as reservoir zone, where you see reserves of cartilage are seen. If there is a deformity of the resting zone, this will result in storage disorders. If there is some deformity in the resting zone, this will result in storage disorders. Second, we have proliferative zone. If there is any problem in the proliferative zone, this results in deformities and this results in formation of dwarfs. See, the next zone is the proliferation zone. If there is any problem in this proliferation zone, this will result in formation of dwarfs or giants or Laren syndrome, or it is also common in scurvy. Okay, in scurvy or giants or Laren syndrome, there is defect in proliferative zone. Then where do you see defect in this maturation zone? The defect in maturation zone is mainly seen in the cases of trauma. Okay, then where do you see the defect in provisional calcification? That means everything is formed normally but the calcification is defective. Where do you see the defect in provisional calcification? The defect in this provisional calcification is mainly seen in mineralization disorders like rickets. You see defect in calcification. Okay, but in scurvy you see the problem in proliferation zone. Okay, so these are the different zones and the disorders associated with it. Then if you see in the bones can be divided into two types. The bone contains of two different types of cells. 1/3 of the cells include the organic cells, whereas 2/3 of the cells are inorganic cells. So 1/3 cells are organic cells, and these organic compounds contain cells and proteins. Actually proteins are present 95%, whereas cells are present only 5%, and the proteins which are found in bones are type 1 collagen, whereas cells found in bone include osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Then we also have inorganic. 2/3 of the bone is inorganic constituent. What is the mineral seen in the inorganic constituent? There is one important mineral, that is calcium hydroxyapatite is the mineral found in inorganic component of bone. Okay, then if you see the bones, classification of bones are actually divided into, we have the spongy bones and we have the cortical bones. The spongy bones are mainly the bones of the upper end, that is epiphysis is made up of spongy bones. The cortical bones are the dense bones in the long bone are cortical bones. So these are the important things. Then if you see, these are the parts of the bones which we have already dealt. Okay, what is this? This is the epiphysis. Okay, this is the metaphysis. What is this metaphysis? This metaphysis is actually a cancellous bone, right? If there is defect in this metaphysis, that is cancellous bone, this will result in malunion. Complication is malunion. Okay, when there is defect in the metaphysis, okay, or cancellous bone, it will result in malunion. If there is a defect in diaphysis, what is diaphysis made up of? It is made up of cortical bone. So if there is a defect in this diaphysis or cortical bone, this will result in non-union. You should remember, if there is a defect in metaphysis, it causes malunion generally. If there is a defect in diaphysis, it causes non-union generally. Okay, then here we also have periosteum. This periosteum is the part which it is the covering of the bone. Okay, it covers the bone and it also helps in growth of the bone. Number 1, it covers the bone. Number 2, it helps in growth of the bone. Number 3, it also provides the blood supply to the bone. So these are the main things which you see in the periosteum. Periosteum features. Periosteum covers the bone. It will help in growth of the bone and it will provide blood supply to the bone. Okay, this periosteum layer is connected to the bone by some fibers called as Sharpney fibers. These are Sharpie fibers. These Sharpie fibers will connect the periosteum to the bone. Okay, now what is fracture? So we will see some things about fracture in the next class. So thank you guys for watching my lecture. This is the anatomical part of orthopedics. Thank you for watching my lecture. Thank you.